So let's talk a little bit about Guardian Circle. I was telling you before we started that, like, I feel like this is your guys' Super Bowl, right? So we've got a pandemic. Yes, literally, we've got a pandemic that occurred that led to this economic shock, and now we've got social unrest in all 50 states and even internationally. And so maybe just give us a kind of overview of like what is Guardian Circle, and then we can kind of talk about like why it's important given the timing right now.
Yeah, so Guardian Circle is Friends and Family 911 or Community Emergency Response. So the idea is you download our app and you get your friends, family, and neighbors to also download it. And then you connect as guardians in the system. Both of you have to opt in. It's like being friends on Facebook, right? And one of you can not guard the other at any moment you want. When you're in trouble, you hit an alert button. So the idea is push a button, help comes. So signal goes out to all your guardians. Their phones start exploding with this evil klaxon sound, which is good because it's an alert and this is an emergency. And then when they answer that alert, everyone is brought into a shared map and chat room. So in under 30 seconds, everybody knows where everybody else is, and everybody can talk to everybody else. And this is the important part. This is true whether those people knew each other beforehand or not. They all know you, but they don't know each other. But getting your mom and your neighbor talking during your emergency, difference between life and death, possibly, right? So that's the basic idea.
And so what are the scenarios in which you guys kind of see this being most helpful? Is this like, hey, I'm drunk and I'm lost? Or is this a thing where I've gotten a really serious car accident? Like, help me understand kind of the situations where you guys foresee this being used.
Yeah, so, well, I can tell you the situation that inspired it, which is a great example. My girlfriend had a stroke, and she's fine. I like to say that right away. So she was, but she works out of her garage. She was all alone, and she couldn't type, and she was trying to dial the phone, like her brain just wasn't working, right? So she could have pushed a button, but that was kind of it. And I happened to come home at a weird time, and I found her and brought her to the hospital, and it all worked out. But afterwards, I started thinking about this. I'm like, my God, like if I hadn't gotten there in time, strokes are like time dependent. If too much time passes, you're paralyzed or you're dead. So, and I realized, and when I reversed engineered the situation, that there was all kinds of help all around her. Her neighbor was home. Several people had been driving by. In short, there were 7 people within 1,000 yards of her during the course of the emergency. She was drowning in help, but she had no way to get to it. So, and I was like, well, if somebody could just push the button, I started thinking about Guardian Circle, right? Somebody pushed a button, then, and somehow we could have an Uber-like screen where instead of cars coming, humans were alerted and could coordinate. Then this would, your network is closest and can help you fastest kind of thing, right? So that was the original. It was really about health things initially, and then as we started showing it to people, we did show it. There's a place called Crypto Blockchain Plug here in LA, and it's sort of it's in the inner city, so a lot of folks there are scared to call the cops. They're like, we don't call unless, somebody's arm is chopped off, then okay. But other than that, no. They'd rather sort of handle things themselves. So anyone that likes neighborhood watch kinds of things for whatever reason, it's very appealing to them. If you're in a remote area where the cops can't get to you, it's also right. It's not really a practical option. Call the cops, are gonna be here in an hour, right? That doesn't really help you. So, and then finally, women's safety is a big concern that a lot of people think of with this. So we, the X Prize people, when they found out what we were doing, they were doing a women's safety X Prize to protect women in India. And, there, the cops, when the cops come, the cops usually assault the woman also. So, right, which is just insane, right? But so the answer is not more cops, right? So, in India, they already know kind of what America is now knowing for the first time. They've known it for a long time, that you can't rely totally on the police. So there's the women's safety, a lot of jobs that women are alone and possibly going to be isolated by a creepy guy. Real estate agents, hotel housekeepers. It's a big problem for hotel housekeepers. In fact, there are now panic button laws that are coming out nationwide requiring hotels to buy products like what Guardian Circle has, and we are now selling into that market. We're just starting to sell into that market ourselves. So, kind of a wide range of things. But you're right that before all of this COVID and other things, when we told people about Guardian Circle, our pitch was kind of like 911's not good enough in a lot of ways. They don't know, they don't know your location when you call from a mobile device. There are problems with 911, but most people feel like 911 is safe, right? If you're in America, you're like, yeah, I'm good. I just call 911, I'm fine. And we had a hard time kind of getting a lot of people to, people don't like to think about emergencies. So getting on their radar was just tough, right? Unless they already were someone that was at risk, elderly, a woman who's been assaulted who, was just afraid of it happening again. If it was on your mind in some way, it was easier. But other than that, it was difficult. Over the last couple of weeks, like 3, 4, COVID, obviously, but the last week in particular, getting people to think about emergencies is no longer a marketing challenge, right? So that has suddenly shifted the dynamic, and now people are seeking us out instead of us seeking them out. So yeah.
And it's the thought process that it sounds like there's kind of two camps, right? One is like, hey, the COVID crisis has made me think much more about those around me, my community, all that kind of stuff. But then two is a lot of the social unrest around police brutality and things like that. Like, I'm fascinated with the idea of creating multiple layers when it comes to community kind of protection, right? So you mentioned kind of neighborhood watch is the least lethal, easiest, kind of loosely organized group, all the way on up to we have a military that protects the United States, right? And there's a whole bunch of steps in there. What you guys have basically done is use technology to create the equivalent of really kind of a neighborhood watch that's technology enabled. And to me, the part that's really interesting is I don't need to know the other people. Right. Like, all we have to do is just be connected. If I know you and somebody else knows you and you're in trouble, then all of a sudden me and that person are on the same team, right? We're here to help you. And so putting us into some kind of chat is a pretty interesting dynamic where you almost create these like ephemeral social network graphs, right, around a person.
Yeah. Also, the emergency world has a name for it. They call it dynamic group management or regrouping. So, but yes, that means exactly what you just said. And that is one of the key problems to solve an emergency response, is getting all these people communicating immediately that can clear up the fog of war, if you will, around the emergency. But these people don't have each other's phone numbers. They don't know each other's names. They typically have no way to communicate or anything that puts them into communication. So we found it's kind of a hard problem to explain to someone. But during your emergency, you're like, oh shit, I really wish X, Y, and Z could talk to one another right now. It's kind of the top problem. So yeah, it's a big deal.